Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 22, text number 8. I think this verse is prose, so it won't be like a probably responding verse. Evam Chandrama Arka Gavastibhya Uparishtal Lakshayo Janata Upalabhyamano Kasya Samvatsara Bhuktim Pakshabhyam Masa Bhuktim Sapadarkshabhyam Dinenaiva Paksha Bhuktim Agrachari Drutatara Gamano Bhunkte. Translation. Above the rays of the sunshine by a distance of 100,000 yojanas, 800,000 miles, is the moon, which travels at a speed faster than that of the sun. In 2 lunar fortnights, the moon travels through the equivalent of a samvatsara of the sun. In 2¼ days, it passes through a month of the sun, and in 1 day, it passes through a fortnight of the sun. Purport. When we take into account that the moon is 100,000 yojanas, or 800,000 miles above the rays of the sunshine, it is very surprising that the modern excursions to the moon could be possible. Since the moon is so distant, how space vehicles could go there is a doubtful mystery. Modern scientific calculations are subject to one change after another, and therefore they are uncertain. We have to accept the calculations of the Vedic literature. These Vedic calculations are steady. The astronomical calculations made long ago and recorded in the Vedic literature are correct even now. Whether the Vedic calculations or modern ones are better may remain a mystery for others. But as far as we are concerned, we accept the Vedic calculations to be correct. Om Gyan Timirandasya Gyan Shalak Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamini. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, I'm not an astronomer, so I won't be able to explain the distances of the moving of the speeds of the planet. But what came to my mind as a topic is as mentioned at the end of the purport, how the modern science, or really the material consciousness, is unreliable. And the spiritual consciousness, the spiritual truths, the spiritual reality remains fixed and steady and reliable as a foundational concept for reality as we know it. In this context, of course, it is with regards to the cosmology of the planets. As is mentioned, the scientists are always changing their philosophies. They're always changing their opinions and conceptions. Just within the last 50 to 100 years, the cosmology of the world as is understood by science has changed many, many times. Just like one planet is first thought to be not a planet, then they realize, oh, it's actually a planet, now it's a planet. So in this kind of way, they're always changing their mind because they are imperfect. The foundational flaw in the material consciousness is described in the Shastra itself. In the same place that is describing the nature of the cosmology or the structure of the cosmology, but that is just one aspect of the Vedic knowledge. So many things are explained, and one of those things is the fundamental flaw of the material consciousness. That is imperfect senses, the tendency to cheat, to be illusioned. What is the other one? Cheating propensity, imperfect senses, tendency to be illusioned, and there's one more. Tendency to make mistakes. So when you have all those flaws, then you're not a very reliable person to make the definitive rules of or truths of something like cosmology. What to speak of anything else? Then also we are unfortunate, misguided, unhappy, and the list goes on and on. Our senses, imperfect senses, from here I can see only how far. Or I can hear, as we get older, our senses become less sharp, right? When we were young, as a child, a baby can't even see past like their hand, right? So we're so constrained by the limitations of just our body. What to speak of consciousness? Just our body itself limits us in so many ways. someone who mm, so in this way we can Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadramai Ki Jai, Jai Shri Shri Gaura Ki Jai. When we sit and think about it, we can understand in so many ways how the ascending process of making an endeavor by our own limited intelligence to become to become God, to become the dictators of the world, to become the the rulers of the world is a false pretense. Our memory is faulty. Integrity. Within the scientific world, there is so much lack of integrity. Because although they say that they are all about science and what is empirical, the fact of the matter is it's like their own sort of religion, their own sort of cult. And it is a well-known fact that others recognized qualified doctors or teachers, if they publish something that doesn't align with the kind of church of scientific empiricism, they will often, pretty much every time, discredit that person and destroy their career. They'll take away their license, they take away their qualification, and they basically just reject them. This happens often. And I'll share more about that later. But it just goes to show that they're not actually objective. They have their own agenda of what they perceive as truth or what they want to be truth, and anything that doesn't align with that is rejected on the basis of their false ego. Because the scientists want to play God. They want to question God's existence. They want God to come and appear before them, and then they will believe. So this is the rascaldom that Srila Prabhupada chastised so often. That they are slaves to their own mind and senses, yet they wish God to appear before them, or they wish to question the existence of God. So these, when we can start to understand the faulty nature of being embodied, then we can hopefully begin to accept, by the application of our God-given intelligence, that we are very small, and there is only so much that we can understand by the exercising of our own tiny intelligence. And like Srila Prabhupada said, we have tiny brains. So, therefore, rather than trying to apply the ascending process, where we try by our own strength, we accept the descending process. The descending process, which means that we accept the teachings that are coming down directly from the Lord Himself, through the disciple succession, through the acharyas, through the teachers, who have realized the knowledge and are passing it down unchanged. One of the fascinating phenomena of the Vedic literature, of course, there have been some things which have been lost or have been changed, but generally speaking, the Vedic literature is rare in that over thousands of years it has remained the same, which cannot be said for other religious texts, for one, and just in general literature has been changed over the centuries, and the Vedic literature is one of the only ones which has been consistent in its core of the message over thousands of years. So that is because of the descending process, where the tradition is that we do not change anything. We simply receive it, and even in presenting it in a way that is, let's say, palatable for others, has become more relevant because of the preaching mission. But even then, the core message must never be compromised. That everybody understands. Therefore, aprasampradayas are rejected. Therefore, philosophical discrepancies must be addressed. Why? What is the purpose of that? Is it to just be sticklers? Is it just to be fanatic? No, it's because the message must not be changed. That is what makes it powerful. If we were to change according to our own ideas, then everything would be lost. And even amongst other traditions, even then, like Srila Prabhupada, when he said, if you hear one thing different from what I have said, then everything can be ruined. So even within the Vedic paradigm, there are different traditions that all adhere to their particular, philosophy, even if it is cohesive within the idea of God consciousness. So to remain fixed and to the principles of the Vedic knowledge is what has sustained its existence over millions of years. And so and of course, even in that aspect, how do we actually understand knowledge? Because Krishna says, I give the intelligence by which one can come to me. From me comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So even when it's as far as remaining chaste to the Vedic paradigm, but it is not remaining chaste simply by exercising our limited intelligence. It's about surrendering our lives, because by the devotional practice, that we can become sheltered by the internal energy of the Lord, and in that way He provides what we lack and preserves what we have. That is Krishna consciousness, to remain sheltered, remain under the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because you can see nowadays there are many so-called yogis who adopt aspects of the Vedic knowledge, but they have no interest in God consciousness. They present yoga, this, that, Kriya Yoga, chakras, and all these type of things which we can find in the Vedic literature. But they do not take shelter of God. They want to be in control. Just like for many years I was in New York, and there was, yoga is so popular now, so there were many yoga classes going on. And it was very easy to observe that out of all of the people who were coming for yoga classes, very few became devotees. Over a period of time, it started to increase, but generally speaking, it was a much lower percentage of the majority of people who were coming, who were really into yoga, that became devotees, which I thought was fascinating, because we tend to assume that people who are into yoga surely must be into spiritual life. But Krishna consciousness is not just a spiritual life. It's not a pseudo-spiritual mode of goodness, type of practice. It is much more than that. Whereas many people there are attached to the mode of goodness. They like feeling good, they have a clean life, they have nice friends now, their life has changed, they feel good, they feel strong, and they're satisfied with that. And as far as philosophy, they simply speculate. But they don't have an interest to surrender their life to God. So when we talk about spiritual life, or when we talk about the adherence to the teachings of the Vedic literature. Where the Vedic literature is coming from. It's coming from Krishna. But that they cannot accept. So for one who wants to enjoy the fruits of their labor, then there is no convenience for them in recognizing the source of the knowledge as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult for them to break out of that attachment to living according to their own whims. And so this we can see across the board, within religion, outside of religion. That is the age-old problem. The false ego, that we want to be the controllers and the enjoyers. And we are willing to employ all sorts of methods, whether it's through religion, through philosophy, through science, through spirituality, whatever it is, we find some way to create our own dreams. And that we can see all the time. Just like in the world of academia, so much ego is there, so much pride. They are proud of their education, of their MB, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever it is. They're very arrogant, and so therefore they cannot accept anything outside of their own understanding. But that is the opposite of the way to become realized. We see within the Bhagavatam how so many sometimes seemingly ordinary souls became self-realized simply by surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dhruva Maharaj was a five-year-old boy. Just from being touched by the Lord, he was able to compose the most profound poetry, which would take years and years, maybe a lifetime of dedication to studying literature, Sanskrit, grammar. They say it takes 12 years to learn Sanskrit. But Dhruva Maharaj, 5-year-old boy, he could recite fantastic prayers. How is it possible? Only by the Lord's empowerment he was able to do such a thing. So we see many examples like this, that for those who align themselves with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they become empowered, because the Lord himself is the origin of all knowledge. So if we are under the shelter of the Lord, then we have, you can say, your access to an unlimited wealth of knowledge. But of course, it is the humility of the devotee that gives them the qualification to receive that. Otherwise, we become proud. So that humility and the acceptance of the position of the servant, the position of an insignificant, tiny jiva. So it's counterintuitive. When we make ourselves small before God, then actually we become big. But when we make ourselves big before God, then we will have to become humbled. And we see that in so many cases. So many demons who came to attack Krishna. Powerful demons. Hiranyakashipu, he did intense austerity, yogic austerity. And he developed immense powers. What to speak of being blessed by Lord Brahma to be, effectively immortal. Immense yogic powers. Ravana also, he had immense yogic power. He had blessings from Lord Shiva. It was described that he could sing so beautifully that everyone around him would faint, basically. But he's a demon, he's a demoniac person. But he had yogic powers. These were very extremely, they dominated the whole universe. Bali Maharaj went up to the heavenly planet, just kicked all the demigods out, and just took over the whole place. So these are powerful beings. They're not just like, petty robbers that, with a gun and a mask on. They're literally like gods. And they were stamped out easily by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So no matter how powerful they were, their power is insignificant. They're like toys. The Lord, He toys with them for His own satisfaction. So the descending process actually is the secret to becoming all knowledgeable. All qualities, all potencies, all yogic potencies are there for the pure devotee. All qualities, what is it? Harava bhaktasya kuto mahadgunan. That the devotee has all the qualities of the demigods. All mystic yoga potencies, everything. But because he is surrendered to the Lord, he doesn't misuse any of these things. So, the real way to become empowered, the real way to become, masters of knowledge or perception or understanding, all of these different things that are attractive for the conditioned soul, is actually simply to align ourselves with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and to be engaged in devotional service. Because by that, we can conquer death. For how many years? So many years, scientists and people have been trying to conquer death. Everyone wants to conquer death. Nobody wants to die. And yet it is unavoidable. The scientists who were geniuses in the eyes of the conventional world also had to become old, also had to become sick, also had to die. And none of them have been able to change that. No matter what they do, they can't fix it. They're all dying. So, what is the solution? They have no solution. Simply speculation. But we have the solution to conquer death. But that is not within our own limited capacity within this body. How to conquer the material energy? We require help outside of the material energy. Just like if you're locked in a cage, how do you get out? Someone has to open from the outside. That is the only way to get out. Or if you're in the jail, how do you get out of the jail? The judge or the president or the king, whatever, has to pardon you. Someone who is outside, who is not controlled by that system, only they can free you. So similarly, how do we become free from death? From the deathless one, that is Krishna. Krishna cannot die. Krishna never dies. He is eternally existing, as we are in our original identity. Death is only relative to the material body. Death only exists within the material world, in the world of impermanence. There is no death in the spiritual reality. So therefore, when we look from from the perspective of the Vedic literature, we see the attempt to try to control the world and all these things. It's like, such tiny blips, in eternal time. They cannot think outside of their own worldview. Even though a scientist is supposed to be a broad thinker, a scientist is supposed to be someone who is an investigator, who is curious. But they are dogmatic scientists. They cannot think outside of their own understanding. So therefore, they are just like a dog, who's chasing his tail and just running in circles. So why do we so strongly reject the premises of the scientists? It is because the scientists do not accept God. Therefore, they must be rejected. Because we understand that everything in this world is due to the Lord's arrangement, the Lord's energies, the Lord's manifestations. The Lord's will itself is sustaining everything. And we ourselves, part and parcel of the Lord. Jiver Swarupahoy Krishna Nitya Das. That is our original nature, is to be an eternal servant of Krishna. So therefore, any philosophy or ideology which does not accept the existence of God must be rejected. Wholesale. So, even when you look into in the fourth canto, in the pastime of Prithu Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada writes extensively in multiple purports about how the leaders of the world also effectively must be rejected, because they're not devotees, they're not God conscious. Sometimes you may find, but generally speaking, you do not hear them speaking about God. They're not trying to make a God-conscious society. So he said, therefore, what is the use of voting for someone who is an atheist? And then he says something interesting, that because they are conditioned, what does it mean to be conditioned? We have the mind, we have the senses, we have all the impressions from our previous life, we have unlimited material desires, the lust, which burns like a blazing fire, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, an insatiable fire. So, because of their material conditioning, they can only think of me and mine, myself and the extensions of myself. And so, in this way, it is actually not possible for them to act for the welfare of everyone. Not possible. Just like if you ask a dog to be the president, not possible. The dog's consciousness is limited. The dog can't speak. The dog eats, dog food and poops on the floor. Therefore, he cannot be relied on to be a leader. But this applies in the same way, that they cannot act for the welfare of others because they don't believe in God. They see everyone only as objects of their senses. If we don't see others as spirit soul, then we can only see them as object of our senses. How else can we see them? We're only seeing the body. So we see others based on our attractions or our ideologies or philosophies based on our own material consciousness. So we are limited. Therefore we see so much exploitation happening in the world, because everyone is seeing everyone else as an object of their enjoyment. So therefore, how is it possible that they can act for the benefit of others? It's not possible. So, God consciousness, and not just dogmatic religion, not just philosophical ideologies, but the heart of God consciousness is to become a surrendered servant, to align ourselves as much as we can with the principles that are set by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself, and by extension, the Acharyas, who are coming and sharing the knowledge and exemplifying it themselves in their own behavior. And in that way, then we get access to the empowerment of the unlimited Lord, who has unlimited power, unlimited intelligence, unlimited beauty, unlimited strength. And we ourselves have that in a small capacity. Or in our nature, we are unlimited, even though we are small parts of the Lord. But in our nature, we are actually unlimited, unlimitedly wonderful. In the spiritual world, we cannot imagine the beauty that exists, not just within the environment, but even just in ourselves. There's a now that's esoteric, but there is description of how the spiritual forms are in the spiritual world. They are extremely beautiful. Just like when Ajamil, he is being taken away by the Yamadutas, and the Vishnudutas come. And what is the description? They're effulgent, they're beautiful, they are, shining dress. Their presence just permeates the whole environment. That is because they have spiritual bodies. So who we are outside of this material encasing is more wonderful than we could imagine. So that is a real identity. That is the real happiness, is to become aligned with our own true identity in relationship to Krishna. So the surrender is actually freedom. That is the kind of, again, counterintuitive principle. That the more that we can align ourselves with Krishna, to that degree we are free. And the more we try to act simply for our own enjoyment, then to that degree we become entangled, right? And I'm sure we all have experience of that we try to pursue our dreams and our life somehow becomes more complicated and more difficult. And of course, we have to live our lives according to our nature and our we have to be situated. But we can always try to keep Krishna in the center of our lives. So I want to end with a fascinating story which illustrates how the scientists or the scientific world is like just catching up with the Vedic understanding. So I've been listening to I guess it's a podcast, but anyway, it's an investigation that was started by one woman who was some sort of therapist or something like that. Anyway, she discovered through some parents that she had been connecting with that there were autistic children who were nonverbal. I mean, they not able to speak. Autistic, like heavily autistic children who started to show abilities of telepathy, meaning speaking through their mind or being able to read minds and things like that. And so this is actually a phenomenon that has been going on for many, 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 many years. All the way back into the 90s, there are teachers who reported seeing this and experiencing this. And so they've been testing it and doing all these things. And all of these children or people with these abilities they're doing these tests to try to prove it. And they're showing 100% accuracy and capacity every single time. Now, why this is interesting is because in discovering this and trying to, all the scientists are breaking their brain trying to understand how this is possible. Because again, they Jai Shishi Jagannath Baladev Subramanian ki Jai, Jai Shishi Gauranitai ki Jai. They are attached to their own worldview. It's literally like a cult, a religion. They have their own credo that everything needs to fall into within the scientific world. So they can't understand how this is possible. They can't prove it by brain scans and things like that. Like they did a brain scan, while one of these children was showing this ability. And in that moment, nothing changed in their brain scan. And they're like, "Oh, how is it possible? It should show that they're using their brain to do something." And so what this investigator she keeps coming back to is, for many of them, they were also kind of like disembodied, in the sense that, like, some of them, they're paralyzed, or because of their autism, they often are rejected by society, in the sense that, like, it is assumed that they can't learn, that they can't study, they can't learn numbers, they can't do anything, and so they're kind of just left. And so a lot of times they don't learn how to use their motor skills and things like that, and so it is assumed that they're just not in there. And so because of their physical disabilities often, the question came, well, then what is going on? They have this ability. It seems that is something around consciousness. And they keep coming back to this point that maybe it is consciousness that is the basis of everything. And it was just so fascinating, because that is like kindergarten in the Vedic literature. That is a basic understanding. That, and it's not just like telepathy, it's other things that, they can feel the presence, not the presence, they can feel like the spirit within animals, within plants. They have all sorts of like fascinating awareness, which these are all things that you would find in someone who is deeply advanced in spiritual life. In the sense of, like, these are common things for pure devotees. So it's very interesting to see how, and then the other thing is that, there were many people who had been seeing this, and any one of them who would report it or write about it would be like doxxed, or not doxxed is the right word. They would be like, what's the word? I can't think of the right word, but like I was saying before, their license is taken away, their book is banned, all these kind of things. They're basically just rejected from the scientific society. So they're trying to like hide it. They're trying to suppress that this is a real thing, which is very interesting, very telling. Because how is it that we can continue to be controlled, to be consumers, is as long as we are staying within the bodily consciousness of life. That is how we're able to be controlled and exploited. As long as we have that consciousness of just enjoyment and the avoidance of suffering and such a small mind, that's how we're able to remain consumers. As soon as we expand our awareness and consider, I'm a spirit soul and I am an eternal servant of God, our whole way of engaging with the world can change. And I think that they know that. Anyways, the point is very fascinating to see, to hear about, because they keep coming back to this question that there's something here that that is beyond our understanding about consciousness. And does this consciousness continue after the body dies? They literally are asking that question. It's very interesting. But for us, first, second chapter of Bhagavad Gita is explained clearly that death is not the end of the soul. So slowly at a snail's pace, they're coming to understand these things. Because it is undeniable. At some point, they cannot deny. Of course, they're very stubborn. So they may go lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes without ever understanding even their own self, or to speak of others. So it's a very fascinating thing. You can check it out if you like. It's called Telepathy Tapes. Very fascinating. But the main thing is that it speaks to consciousness. Consciousness over matter. Consciousness over matter. And consciousness being the basis for existence that we understand. This whole manifestation is engineered by consciousness. It is Krishna's arrangement. or through his empowerment, Lord Brahma, who is the creator. At every step of the way, there is consciousness behind it. The plants are conscious. The ecosystem is alive, is going by a particular arrangement according to the Lord's will. And that we can see so many things that are a certain way, certain plants that grow in certain seasons, certain animals that hibernate in certain times, and in other times they're out. Birds who fly fly in a certain direction at certain times of the year. So many phenomena like that we can see all around us. And it's just astounding that there are people who simply refuse to accept it. And not only refuse to accept it, but just speculate their own ideas as to how it is possible. Of course, we understand this is the false ego, that we want to be the controllers. So when we are afraid, because we think that there is nothing beyond death, when we are afraid, then therefore we want to control, right? If I can somehow at least feel some sense of control, then I might feel more secure. Because there's this thing, death, that I can do nothing about. I have no capacity to change. So therefore, let me at least try to control what I can, and have some experience of happiness. So when we see the truth of these things, we can understand what is really going on. That everyone is afraid to die, because they have no knowledge of what is outside of that. They don't know that they are a soul. They don't know that they will reincarnate. They don't know about karma. They don't know about how the activities that they do in this lifetime will affect them. And so, therefore, the Vaishnava has compassion, actually, because he sees that it is simply ignorance. They are also spiritual. They also have an eternal nature. They also have a relationship with Krishna. So even though we reject their philosophy and their ideas, and we call it for what it is, but we don't forget that they are also spirit souls inside the layers. Of course, we all have our layers, but we understand. Therefore, the Vaishnava tries to preach because he sees that everybody is acting out, for want of God consciousness. So, Jivadoya, the compassion for all the jivas, that is the nature of the Vaishnava. But sometimes, as we saw with Srila Prabhupada, he would show his compassion in chastisement. So, I will stop there, and if there's any questions or comments or anything, otherwise we will end here. Okay. Grantaraj Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
not know. No. Because this last Rakia Mataji, she wanted to start the car. You have time.
No, I do Tulsi Puja, Tulsi Seva, and after that, not before. I'm sorry.
1 hour.
Well, I'm still waiting for somebody. It's probably at least 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.